Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economies webinar on World Youth Skills Day, Net Zero Networking, Skilling Youth for Careers and Sustainability. We are really excited to host this convening of students and young professionals who are looking to build a career in varied sectors of sustainability. And for this, we have experts from green buildings, sustainable cooling and cold chain, and e-mobility to guide our audience in both research and industry-related careers today. To introduce them and to open the webinar, I'm going to invite two dynamic young professionals from AEEE, Anushka Maheshwari, the Assistant Manager for Communications and Digital Media, and Anmol Jain, a Senior Research Associate in our Sustainable Mobility team. Over to the two of you.
Thank you for getting us started, Soundarya. It's a pleasure to welcome you all once again to this special webinar on World Youth Skills Day. As a young professional, I see this day as more than just a reflection on skill building. It's a call to action. In a world facing complex challenges, it's vital that young people not only have access to opportunities, but also feel empowered to shape bold, scalable solutions for a planet-positive future. In 2014, the United Nations General Assembly declared 15th July as World Youth Skills Day to celebrate the strategic importance of equipping young people with skills for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship. India has one of the world's youngest populations. 65% of us are under the age of 35. Every year, nearly 8 million young people enter the workforce. That's not just a statistic, it's a signal of incredible potential. But only if we're given the right tools, the right opportunities, and the right ecosystems to grow. With the green economy expanding rapidly, we're at a pivotal moment. Since 2015, global demand for green skills has grown by 40%, but only 13% of the workforce has the expertise employers are looking for. India alone could generate over 35 million green jobs by 2047. If we want to accelerate our climate goals, green skilling has to be a priority. At AEEE, this is a core part of our mission. One of our organizational goals is to empower over 5 lakh green professionals who can help drive India's net zero transition. And we know this can't be done alone. I would now like to invite my colleague Anmol to share more about how we're building this future with our partners, especially academic institutions and industry partners across the country.
Good afternoon all. So through initiatives like Solar Decathlon India, we are engaging students in real world problem solving. This year's challenge saw participation from over 2,100 students and 290 faculty members working on net zero climate resilient building designs. And later this year, we will host Energize 2025, our flagship residential conference in Panchgili in collaboration with CRDF, SEPT, IIT Delhi, and IIHS. It's a space where students, researchers, and practitioners come together to exchange ideas, collaborate, and co-create solutions. In Energize 2023, we welcomed more than 200 participants from academic institutions and many others. And we are excited to build on that momentum. And now, without further ado, let's start today's session. We are joined by an incredible panel of professionals working on everything from sustainable cooling and cold chain to e-mobility and green buildings. They bring deep insights and hands-on experience, and I hope this session gives you a sense of what's possible, whether you are a student, an early career professional, or simply curious about where the world is heading. Joining us today, we have Dr. Purva Keskar, Director VKE Environmental, Indrajit Shaw, Associate Director Sustainability and ESG CBRE, Anson Sando, Head Energy Programs IIT Madras Research Park, Santosh Mazumdar, the Government Relations and Sustainability, Johnson Controls India, Suchitra Subramanian, Manager Power Advisory, Nangia Anderson India, and Ashwini Tiwari, Founder Autobot. And now our first speaker, Dr. Purva Keskar. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. It is a great opportunity to talk to young minds as always, because they are the future and they are going to create the future, which is going to decide, the fate of our Mother Earth. So with this, I would be really taking ahead and talking about the opportunities in the green building sector And for that, I would just like to tell you that buildings contribute to nearly around 40% of the global carbon emissions. And greening real estate reduces the sector's carbon footprint through energy efficiency as well as low carbon materials, so operational as well as embodied energy. And generally, we find that, it not only talks about climate change mitigation, but also adaptation. And therefore, we realize that there is a growing demand for consumers, corporates, and investors for sustainable and environmentally, responsible properties. So with that as a background, I would really like to share, what are the opportunities here in this sector. I will now start presenting. So give me a minute. I will share my screen with all of you. Yeah, so when we start looking at green buildings, the first, opportunity that comes to mind is, architect with expertise in solar passive architecture, because we all know that solar passive architecture was generally taught as a theory, but over the period, skill set for understanding building science and application of building science in design and having an integrated approach towards design when the buildings are becoming more and more complex is required. So there is a great opportunity for young, students in architecture to develop a expertise in solar passive architecture, because that's the first thing that would lead you to a low energy operational building. And therefore, you have a possibility of looking into this. Then, of course, there is, in the last few years, I would say somewhere around 2004, there wasn't a green building consultant existing around that time because there was no need. There were no, tools which would prompt the real estate sector and the construction sector to go green. But fortunately, the green building rating systems got invented, or rather, they were introduced into the market to trigger this, movement towards green real estate and infrastructure. And there were many rating systems, like you had the eco housing, which was first developed in Pune. Then you have the Griha, LEED, IGBC, EDGE, GEM, and many more which will come in the future. But finally, what you have to understand that for you to become a green building consultant, you need to understand the aspects that would render a real estate or infrastructure green, and you need to be a jack of all the aspects which would contribute to making a building green. Typically, the rating systems not only give you the measures that need to be implemented, but also these measures, when implemented, can be assessed by the green building rating systems. And then you get a certificate, which is a third party recognition that you have been able to integrate all these measures in a building which is going to be built. And typically, you will find that in the early phases, you had the new building rating, which would then, have measures in landscape, biodiversity, water management, waste management, energy simulation, MEP design. So here you will understand that every aspect is an area that you can develop your skill for a green building, because a general landscape person would not look into so many aspects of energy efficiency in terms of diversity of, the plant material, xeriscaping, irrigation systems that you need to make them more water efficient as well as energy efficient. So there is a very expertise kind of a skill which one needs to develop if one wants to consult for the landscape in a green built environment. Also, you'll find that water management is a separate area which you can develop your expertise in. Energy prediction or energy simulation is one area which needs a lot of research and understanding of the different standards which are used, like ASHRAE, ISHRAE, ECBC. So all these are standards and codes which have been developed, and deeper understanding of these standards would help you become an energy simulator, which are very less right now. And there is a lot of demand for energy simulators to be in the market. Also, MEP design, a general MEP designer would have a different approach. But here you will find that if you are to design for a green building, then you have to have a very energy efficient approach towards it. So in terms of design professionals or design students can choose these areas. If you're a civil engineer, you can move into water management, plumbing, electrical design for sustainability, so on and so forth. Also, existing building was one more green building rating which was developed, which not only looked at the design, but also looked at how buildings can be made more energy efficient at an operational stage. So not only energy efficient, but water efficient and waste efficient. So energy audit, water audit, waste management professional, these are the skill sets that you can specifically develop and then be able to contribute to a building to make it more efficient at the operational stage. Now, further to that, everyone is now talking about net zero. And net zero means a larger umbrella understanding of the integrated aspects of energy flows, water flows, and how do you really close the circuit in terms of moving towards net zero water, moving towards net zero waste, and moving towards net zero energy and carbon. So it is not only the design aspect, but understanding of the different technologies which are available in the market, trying to understand and apply these technologies to real life projects. So net zero is one more area that you can develop your expertise in. The next, kind of an level where you start looking into health and well-being of the people who are occupying these buildings. So this kind of a thing started getting more importance after COVID, when one realized that only design will not assure us good environment quality, only energy efficiency will not assure us good environment quality. So these kinds of expertise in terms of lighting design is one area where you can develop your expertise in, because no longer you're only wanting to give good amount of lux levels inside the room, but also look at circadian lighting design, which then controls your circadian rhythm of your body. So these are very specific areas where right now we don't have enough manpower, skilled manpower, and these are the areas that you can start looking into in terms of not only assessing the indoor environment, but also in terms of looking at the performance of the indoor environment. And certain certification systems would require you to do these performance assessment where you can develop these expertise. There is a further thing that when you start looking into the embodied energy of materials, not only in the construction sector, but otherwise as well, eco-labeling is becoming more important and a easy way to choose a material which has low embodied energy, because you will not be able to keep on calculating your embodied energy all the time. So eco-labeling is something that is available now. IGBC has developed a green product rating, which will assure certain eco-labeling values, as well as life cycle assessment of buildings, not only in terms of operational but embodied energy and the materials that you use. So alternative materials and technologies which can help you reduce your embodied energy. So these are the sectors where we have very less manpower. The further things I would say is that sustainable real estate manager is very much a requirement, and big what would you say, corporates are not getting these managers who are able to manage the environmental services in the building, like STPs, like your working of the STPs, your building management system. So all these needs a very specific kind of expertise. Project management for sustainable real estate and infrastructure is also something which is a very niche area, and which is so much in demand, because now that the nation has decided to go net zero, everyone is wanting not only to design but also to manage their projects later. And finally, sustainability manager, which is at a corporate or a real estate level directly, which helps the entity or the organization takes decisions in terms of what way do you really achieve the net zero for your own organization. And ESG consultant is a new kind of an entity which is emerging. Earlier, only the big four were really a part of ESG, but now you'll find that environment, social governance consultants are required even by the tier two kind of companies. And this is one more area that you should be able to look into. The sectors that you can look at in terms of green buildings is, of course, no-brainer real estate sector and infrastructure. but also corporate and manufacturing, because they also have buildings and they need to design their buildings, they need to operate their buildings, and that is where, you know, your expertise and skill building can help you get jobs. Financial institutions also require a lot of this kind of a knowledge, because they need to do due diligence and investors need that. And therefore, understanding of green buildings and all the specific skill sets that would render any environment green is very much in demand. Now you will realize that slowly and steadily the things are changing, and every time there is a new body of information and knowledge that needs to be done a lot of research on, and this research to be applied into real practice. And I think this is a golden time where research is being fed into practice. Every day there is new research which is needed, which then feeds into the practice. So I, being a part, not only as a director at VKE Environmental, which is a consultancy doing all these, consulting in all these fields, but also I am heading a College of Architecture in Pune, and I realize that there is a lot of give and take in terms of research and practice right now in the field of green built environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Keskar. That was really insightful and comprehensive. Especially, you spoke about sectors, skills, and also perspectives that the students should have while entering this field. Thank you for that. And now, to talk more from an industry perspective on green buildings, I will invite Indrajit Shaw, Associate Director, Sustainability and ESG at CBRE.
Thank you, Soundarya.
Yeah.
I'll just share my screen. Let me know if you can see it.
Sure.
Is this visible?
Yes, it's visible now.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Indrajit Shaw, and I lead the Sustainability and ESG practice for CBRE India. While Purva's covered most of the key areas, I think what I'll do is probably take a more implementation-oriented perspective to help you understand what are the areas that you can focus on. The first thing that I'd like to mention before we delve into each of these areas is it would be useful to first understand what kind of a professional you are or you plan to be. And when I say kind, it means are you someone who likes to do a lot of different things or cover a lot of different areas as a consultant would do? Or are you more comfortable as a subject matter expert who wants to delve deep into one particular topic and be a specialist in that area? Now, both of these opportunities lend themselves well to the field of sustainability, but you would need to play to your strengths to make sure that you make the most of either of these two paths. Now, keeping that in mind, what I will do is I will break up the sustainability landscape into what, a key acronym that we use today called ESG, which is a subset of sustainability, but I'll just use that as a framework to help you understand. So E is for environmental, S for social, and G for governance. From an environmental perspective, you could be looking at three key themes. The first being the carbon pathways. So you could be looking at the energy that is used in buildings. Now, this energy is used in a lot of different places. Primarily, it is used in the HVAC, the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system in buildings. That's what uses the maximum energy. And then you have energy used for lighting, for lifts, and so on. So you might want to focus on just developing expertise in identifying what are the key areas that you want to optimize in, particularly if you come from an engineering background or energy specialist background. This would be very useful to help you understand how you can help companies to optimize their energy consumption, because this is one of the largest cost areas for companies. So when you are able to help them optimize, it helps them reduce not only the carbon footprint, but also the cost for operations. The next one is around the entire building envelope itself. So From a building perspective, you could be looking at the envelope of the building or the structure of the building in terms of the facade, the ceilings, the flooring, okay? And therefore, you would need to have a deep understanding of what Purva mentioned as life cycle analysis. So in terms of carbon emissions, we have got two key types of carbon emissions. One, in a building context, one is what we call embodied carbon. When a building is being built, there are certain processes, certain materials that are used, and the sum total of all the emissions from these processes and production of materials up till the point that the building is ready to operate is called embodied emission. Now, in order for you to assess this, there's a process called life cycle analysis. Okay. And you can use this to evaluate at different stages of each of these materials how much energy and emission was embodied. This helps you ascertain the total emission in this building that is embodied and how you can try and mitigate that. The other major emission aspect is the operational emission. And this is where, when the building is in operation, all the emissions that accrue from them need to be accounted for and reduced. So you can choose either one of these two areas as your area of specialization. One of the key things that is now taking precedence is travel. Travel typically happens in two ways. One is the employee travel, the other is the business travel. So, for a lot of large consulting companies, for example, business travel is a very key area that they want to try and focus on. For companies which have very large employee base, such as BPOs, such as telecom companies, so where there is a large employee base, or a lot of facility management companies, there the employee footprint is very large for travel. So you might want to focus on solutions which help reduce the emissions from travel. The last one, and arguably the largest opportunity, is in supply chain. So you could potentially look at identifying ways to reduce what is called employee scope 3 emissions, which is basically the emissions from their supply chain. Now, this comes in a lot of different flavors, so I would encourage you to read more about scope 3 emissions and how they apply to specific companies. Okay, but this is still an emerging area because most companies have a difficult time ascertaining their scope 3 footprint and identifying ways to reduce it. So this is an opportunity for you to focus on this and look at specific solutions that you can bring to companies. On the renewable energy side, we have two different or three different modes through which we can get this. One is called on-site. On-site means whenever there is a building, you have some space either on the top of the building or around the building that you can use for implementing some renewable energy sources like solar or wind or biomass. So you could be focusing on creating solutions around this, where you would deliver solar projects or wind projects or biomass-based projects like biogas plants or composting units that could be installed within these premises, and that would help them reduce their scope 2 emissions. Scope 2 emissions particularly focus on the energy that is procured by these companies. The second option, where you do not have space within the campus, is to buy energy from outside, but from renewable sources. See, for any operation, we purchase energy, whether it's residential or commercial. All that energy currently comes from the distribution company. That distribution company generates that power, typically in India, from coal. Now you have the option of sourcing as a company. They have the option of sourcing this energy from a private power provider who from renewable source. Now here you could actually become a consultant. You could actually work in one of these power production companies, or you could work in the interface of this company which is producing and the company which is buying. So all of these are opportunities where you can become an expert in renewable energy sourcing process, and therefore you can help companies either working as an employee or as a consultant to get renewable energy. The third option, where neither on-site nor off-site, which is purchasing energy from renewable energy providers, is possible. The third option is to buy something called energy attribute certificates, more popularly called REC, Renewable Energy Certificates in India. This is a market that is also growing, where for every unit of renewable energy that a company generates, when I say unit, it means 1 megawatt hour. So for every unit of energy, they are allowed to sell one renewable energy certificate separately from that energy that they produce. So they sell the energy and then they sell the certificate associated with this energy to another company. So you could also become an expert at renewable energy certificates and how that market is developing. On the biodiversity, water, and waste side, a lot of these campuses, corporate campuses, they have lots of plants. So this is again an emerging area where you can become an expert in what kind of plants need to be put in these campuses so they are carbon efficient. Carbon offsets is another large market that is developing, where you can offset your scope 1, 2, or 3 emissions using carbon offsets. So carbon offset is basically a documentary process where there is an entity which is doing a project which results in reduction of carbon. They produce a certificate which is bought by a company which is generating this carbon emission, so that this carbon emitting company can purchase that certificate and show that I have reduced my emission to that extent. Now, this is just a documentation process, but a legitimate one where the carbon emitting company can showcase that they are in a net to net manner neutralizing their emissions, although absolute method wise, they are still producing emissions. Water neutrality is something that is gaining a lot of interest, particularly because India as a country has a number of different regions, including large cities, where water scarcity is becoming a reality. So you might want to focus on ways to source water to these companies as well as to residences. Because this as a commodity, historically, because of availability of water, water is charged very low in India. But now that is slowly changing, where even hill stations like Shimla, with access to perennial sources of water, are facing scarcity. So water neutrality is another area of focus you can look at. Waste, again, is a key element that you can become a specialist in. We produce a substantial amount of waste. In fact, just in terms of the food waste that we waste is equal to the waste that the UK consumes. So that is the kind of waste that we generate in India. So whether you are looking at biodegradable waste, which over time decomposes, or you're looking at dry waste like plastic, wood, and so on, you can become an expert in one of these areas and provide solutions to reduce the waste that is generated on site, or for the waste that's generated to process and dispose of it properly. On the social side, you could become an expert in something called DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So a lot of companies now want to understand how to improve the ratio of male to female, the different types of employees in an organization, which includes people not just male and female, but also people from the LGBTQIA communities, and including people who typically are out of the workforce, like people with disabilities. So you can choose any or all of these areas to become an expert in DEI and offer services to companies. Employee wellness is another key area where you can purely focus on doing things to improve employee wellness. Now, this could be in the form of yoga sessions, in the form of adult games, in the form of engagement sessions, and so on, which help employees improve their wellness and therefore productivity. CSR engagement is very well known because it has been around for a while. You can also become an expert in this area where you help companies deliver on their CSR agenda through a lot of different initiatives within the community. SMEs, which are small and medium scale enterprises, are a very large group of companies who are small in size but large in number that contribute to these emissions as partners to large companies. Now, a lot of the sustainability solutions focus on large companies for their output. However, the SMEs are a sector which has a lot of potential to also mitigate their impact because they contribute to these large companies' supply chain. So you could also look at providing sustainability solution for small and medium scale enterprises. On the governance side, you could look at taking an internal view of governance, which is focusing on organizational strategy. So you could become a sustainability strategy consultant or work in strategy in an organization. You could also help with implementation. In the carbon pathways, I've mentioned all the different areas of implementation as well as in renewable energy. So you could be looking at only being an implementation expert, or after the implementation is done, you could also become a monitoring and evaluation expert. So once this is done, companies need to prove that whatever they have done is actually showing the results they had planned for. You could also become a sustainability training expert, where on each of these areas you could provide training to different organizations. On the external side, there are a lot of different certifications in energy, in waste, in water, in social, and so on, which Purva had explained earlier, that you could focus on, and you could just help companies get certified with these certifications to showcase their credentials in sustainability. Reporting is one area which is slowly gaining traction in India. The top 1,000 companies are mandated to report their emissions through the BRSR framework, but slowly, because a lot of companies working outside are also having bases in India, so they need to follow the opportunities that their parent counterparts need to also adhere to. So reporting on standards such as CDP, GRI, DJSI, and so on is another opportunity where you could potentially look at. Data management for sustainability is one area that covers most of the things that I've mentioned here. So for all of this, you would need to collect data and you would need to report out in a proper manner. How do you manage all that data? There are lots of platforms out there who are trying to create this. So you could potentially be working for some of these companies if you like technology, where these companies are building the technology platforms to collect all of this data in one place. The final, and this is for those who like thinking broad, is integrated solutions. So you could be looking at how you could bring all of these different solutions together to help create a complete organizational structure and roadmap for getting companies to net zero. So these are some of the key areas. I'm happy for you to reach out to me if you have any specific questions either now or later on, so that you can get started on your sustainability career. Thank you, and back to you.
Thank you, Indrajit. You broke down ESG really well for us, and I think all of us have learned a lot today. Uh, and before I introduce our next speaker, I would just request all our speakers to please close their presentations within the allotted time, so we have as much time as possible for Q&A. And now I will welcome Anson Sando, Head Energy Programs at IIT Madras Research Park, as we move into cooling. And Anson will be taking a look at cooling from the research perspective. Over to you, Anson.
Thank you, Soundarya, and I hope you can hear me. I'll just pull up my slides and we can get started.
Yes.
I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
All right. Firstly, thank you. I mean, this is great. I think this is an important topic that we should all be sort of talking about, and very glad to sort of be amongst students who are looking at, sustainability as a sort of potential area that they want to pursue careers in. I'm going to sort of talk about sustainable cooling in particular, and I thought I will sort of try and focus on the India opportunity. But I have up on my slide the map of Africa, actually. And why I sort of put this up is actually just to give you perspective. India's cooling demand over the next decade and a half is estimated to be equivalent to the entire electricity consumption of Africa as a whole. That is the sheer size of the opportunity that we're looking at when we talk about cooling. It is an Africa-sized problem, or if we sort of look at it in another way, it could be a very real opportunity that we can significantly contribute towards. And that is essentially what I'd like to highlight, in my sort of brief presentation today. And just to sort of double down on some of these numbers, 50% of India's peak electricity or energy demand will be for cooling. And just sort of slice it in another way, the electricity demand for cooling alone is set to increase tenfold in the next decade and a half. And so this becomes a very real sort of problem or opportunity, as I sort of mentioned in my, introductory remarks, in that in some sense, cooling will turn into a deal breaker in terms of electricity consumption, and how we're doing it will particularly play an important role in the way India as a country, as well as all of us in terms of organizations, as well as individuals, sort of move towards net zero. And sort of the question that we want to put across is that how can we meet this exponentially growing demand in sort of the right manner? One example that I thought I'll take just to sort of highlight a success story that has happened in India very well is in that of solar. In fact, in the last 13 years, from the year 2012, in fact, 2012 was the year I graduated, and that's why I picked that year. It was also the time that solar started taking off in the country. We have 100x'd the capacity in solar alone. And that has happened because primarily it has also become one of the most cost-effective forms of energy generation in the world. In fact, India today produces the cheapest form of electricity through solar in the country. Another great example that we can sort of look back and talk very highly upon is that of the LED deployment that has been the largest of its kind in the world that has taken place in India over the last couple of decades. And in some sense, what I'm trying to highlight here is that can we replicate the success seen in solar PV and LEDs for sustainable cooling? And I thought I'll sort of talk about what one could pursue from the lens of what we have done at IIT Madras Research Park. And just to sort of give you perspective again, we're a 1.2 million square feet commercial complex. We're spread across 11.7 acres. And the task that we set up for ourselves is how do we move towards sustainable cooling and decarbonizing the entire sort of campus as a whole. Again, to provide some numbers for sort of reference, we consume on average 70 megawatt hour of electricity per day. Our contracted demand is about 5,000 kilowatt. And today, through on-site and off-site renewable energy generation, which Indrajit sort of mentioned, we're able to power 80% of all of the requirements of our campus. And we're saying we're not only doing renewable energy generation, but we also want to do demand and supply matching. Because one thing that we don't realize is that if we're going to get all of our energy from renewable sources, there will be one major problem, that is of the mismatch of energy generation from solar and wind, which will come from the sun only during the day, and from the wind during the afternoons or evenings, which will never in some sense match the consumption patterns, which is in some sense going to happen in different points of time based on the kind of consumption and location that one is situated in. And so what we've done is set up thermal storage systems for meeting our cooling requirements and battery storage systems for meeting our electricity requirements. And what we've done in some sense to begin with is simply to understand the building. In fact, I want to throw out another data point, is that today at the research park, we're measuring close to 1.2 million data points in terms of how we're consuming electricity, where that electricity is being used, and how efficient that is being used in the campus today. And how we have sort of benefited from it is in the year 2024 alone, we were able to save both in terms of carbon as well as costs by going sustainable. In fact, our yearly sort of numbers showed that we were able to save the equivalent of 7,430 tons of CO2 emissions from going out into the atmosphere, and about 4.3 crore rupees by utilizing sustainable sources of energy generation, storage, as well as cooling requirements. And in some sense, we've done end-to-end cooling integration. Again, the reason why I want to put this out here is to, in some sense, excite students and some of these youngsters, because we're also an ecosystem that has churned out close to 500 startups today. In fact, the likes of Agnikul, Aether, and several others came in from this ecosystem and came in from research projects that we took up at our campus. One other example of another opportunity that could be the next Aether or Agnikul of sorts is sort of one that we're really seeing in the sustainable cooling value chain. Again, what we've done is about 3,000 tons of TR or cooling is required in the facility today. And what we've done is build a district cooling like setup. And to meet and match the requirements, what we've done is designed, developed, and commissioned a thermal storage system. Now, what this does is anytime there's excess solar or wind, we take that excess energy, chill water, and store it in this large thermally insulated tank, which stores this at about 6 degrees Celsius. And whenever there's a deficit of cooling or no energy, we take the chilled water from these tanks and utilize it for our cooling requirements. And one other intervention that we've done, and one that I want to emphasize on, is that we need to build these systems and infrastructures both to meet the cooling requirements as well as, more importantly, for the comfort requirements of the occupants in these spaces. Now, this is a simple innovation that one of our students, in fact, did as an intervention to reduce the amount of energy usage, whereas also enhance the kind of comfort that we're seeing in spaces. If you've looked at any office building or large hotel conference room, what you'll see is one single machine that is providing cooling for the entire room as a whole. Now, what we did is we set up individual cooling systems or outlets that divided a large room, say, of 100 people into 10 smaller zones. and we built in occupancy sensors and thermal monitoring systems to essentially provide only the amount of cooling that is required when it is required. So as you can see in this image in the bottom right, it opens and closes based on how many occupants are there and what is the temperature in that particular zone, effectively helping us manage the amount of energy required to cool the space and also make sure that it is comfortable for the occupants in these rooms. Because very often you'll find that these spaces are either too cold or too hot. And this is an innovation that we built as a student-led innovation, which is now churned out into a startup that is actually deploying this out in the market today. Now, this is sort of all of the slides that I have, but I want to sort of end with a note that this is actually one of the biggest opportunities of any kind that you will find in the market as a whole. And if any one of you are interested in working in this, either in terms of being a part of a research project, or if you have an innovation of your own, we're here to sort of incubate you, support you, and helping nurture you into being a startup of your own. And with that, I'll stop and welcome any questions at the end of this session today, or you can please write to me, and I'll happy to be connecting with you and engaging with you on this topic. Thank you very much to AEEE and the team for organizing this, and I'll stop here and hand it back to Soundarya.
Thank you, Anson. And it's great to hear about all the innovations at IIT Madras Research Park. That was a very insightful presentation, and I'm sure we will be getting a lot of questions on it once we get to the question and answers. Now let's move to the industry part of cooling. And with that, I would like to invite Santosh Mazumdar, Director, Government Relations and Sustainability at Johnson Controls India.
Well,
Welcome,
Santosh.
Yeah.
What a fascinating way of celebrating this World Youth Skills Day. I think very innovative idea. And I was wondering why we had to choose green buildings and sustainable cooling to be addressing to the students. I can't think of a better field today, especially for something that requires multidiscipline engineering. This field is undergoing rapid transition as we speak. Now, Anson and previous speakers spoke about the demand that we have in the world today. Now, I think Dr. Keskar mentioned 40% of the emissions in the world are contributed by buildings. And if you just break this down further, within that 40%, you'll actually see that roughly around 3/4 of it, around 30% or so, comes from what we call operational carbon. That is running a building, the services that you need to do. Interestingly, out of that 50%, out of that 30% or 3/4 of that 40% of emissions, 50% of the energy in a building is actually consumed by the heating and cooling equipment. Now, if you further break it down, you'll actually see that there is one. I'm talking of large commercial buildings, and to an extent it might be applicable to residential buildings also. But imagine large commercial buildings when I'm speaking in this context. So out of that 50% of the energy that goes into the building for, let's say, sustainable for cooling and heating, there is this one equipment called the chiller, which basically produces chilled water to be circulating circulating the building, and when air is blown, and we feel that thermal comfort. Now that chiller is what is making the energy consumption go up for heating and cooling. Quite a lot of things have happened, and I've come to why it's important for students to understand this and pursue a career in this. The cooling technology, right from when Warren Johnson, our founder, founder of Johnson Controls, 140 years ago, invented this thermostat, which was basically to automate or rather adjust the temperatures within a building on its own without huge manual interventions. Till now, having the state-of-the-art chillers, there's been a rapid transition. I'll tell you one thing. Now, these chillers are basically a combination of compressors and pumps and such many other such mechanical equipment, and it's got a lot of rotating parts in it. When you speak of rotating parts, you think of bearings, right? And bearings usually are, I don't know, maybe there are roller bearings and which are heavy duty bearings, and those were the ones which was causing a lot of energy consumption because they were, there was a lot of friction there. This is very interesting technology that now is being used worldwide. I mean, you're seeing even public trains running on this principle. That's called magnetic levitation, which basically avoids the friction where the shaft is basically floating and there's no direct contact. This magnetic levitation was adapted to chilling for chiller machines, and since then, those buildings or those chillers which uses magnetic levitation, the energy consumption from an average chiller comes down to roughly 40–50%. That means you are reducing not just emissions, you're also saving costs. You are most importantly taking the load away from the grid. So there's a lot of innovation happening. When I speak of innovation, and there's also this, there's one thing that is called innovation uh, in the industries, and there's another thing which talks about policies. The government is basically promoting. Government clearly sees this. Governments clearly see this. Where sustainable cooling can be encouraged, and they need to come up with policies. One of the problems we have seen in India is that we have got great policies. The government is doing a fantastic job. AEEE is doing a very good job of facilitating the industry, academia, government interactions, and coming up with policies not only in the center but then also the states. But there is a big gap. Dr. Keskar sort of alluded to this in the previous talk. The gap is the policy to implementation gap is because of lack of capability within the industry. We need, IGBC is doing a great job of certifying buildings, but we need more. We need more people who are able to understand how buildings are consuming energy, map this down, bring in technologies, and eventually reduce all this problem. That capability building is not happening at the pace at which the technology is moving or the cities are building their infrastructure. So that's a big gap. Now that's where I think we have an opportunity as corporates, as industry associations to drive capability building. And what does it take? Now, it talks about primarily multidisciplinary. You can be an electrical engineer, you can be a mechanical engineer, you can be an electronics and communications engineer. This is a multidisciplinary engineering. And most importantly, talk about AI today. Now, there are two buzzwords in the world. Now, one is AI, the second one is sustainability. Sustainable cooling brings both of these things together. Now, we are now speaking of autonomous buildings. Now, there was this very interesting innovation idea that Anson showed about the diffusers trying to adjust the flow. Now, imagine autonomous buildings. You walk into a building, there are sensors which measure, let's say, humidity, carbon dioxide, many other parameters, and they say that's based directly proportional to the occupancy of it. And then say, look, I think in this fourth floor, second meeting room, there are more number of people. The sensors are telling me that this needs to have a bit more cooling. That through the sensor network, it's then adjusts the speed and the flow, and then basically sends down more air, more chill air into that room, basically cooling it. So that's an intervention. I'm giving a very simple example here. Now there are multiple examples, in terms of how building management systems are used. A curtain draws on itself, sensing that there is too much sunlight, which is causing the room to get heated up and then increasing the load. So it just says block the sunlight so that you're able to go. This is all done automatically. There's nobody intervening in here. Now this is not just in a building. This is in a set of buildings, and now this requires a lot more use cases to be developed. This requires a lot of engineers working on the ground. It's already happening in Europe. It's already happening in US. It's already happening in India, and not at a scale at which we would like. But AI is in a very big way coming into this buildings, incorporating sustainable cooling as well. That's where I say, a combination of any of this multidisciplinary engineering and combined with the knowledge of what's happening in the world today, especially in the field of artificial intelligence, would make a very successful, or rather very compelling option for corporates to look at talent in this way. With that, I will stop here. I have plenty more examples, but I'm just being cognizant of the time here. We could even talk about how we can predict the failure using digital twins, which is once again another area. There's a lot more happening here. Stay glued onto this in this field. Google a lot more. Understand how you can take a part, you can play a part in this. Contact us in case if you need any help. But this is an emerging field, and wish you all success. With that, back to you, Sandhya.
Thanks so much, Santosh. That was a good conversation, and I'm very glad to see AI enter the conversation. I'm also sure that we'll be getting questions related to that because that has been the hot topic. And with that, we will be moving to e-mobility. And from the research side, I will like to invite my first speaker, Suchitra Subramanian from Nangi Anderson Private Limited, she manages power advisory there. Welcome, Suchitra.
Thanks a lot, and thank you for inviting me, Alliance for Energy Efficient Economy. And I'm really glad to be addressing young professionals and students in colleges, and even more thrilled that I'm part of such a distinguished panel. So starting off, like we all know the basics of why electric vehicles are the buzzword now. And as we are shifting towards reducing carbon emissions, electric vehicles right now are the best choice as an alternative to conventional vehicles. So people talk about hydrogen and biofuels, but as of now, EVs are the most they're the most popular. And why not so? Because they are energy efficient as compared to ICEs. They convert around 60 to 70% of the electrical energy from the grid, as compared to ICEs, which are just 20% efficient when it comes to converting energy. And yes, there are lots of criticisms about whether EVs are really green or not. But there are many reports that talk about, how they are actually 38%. They have 38% lower emissions than ICEs, and the entire policy ecosystem is figuring out how to solve the problem of energy intensive manufacture of batteries and the critical minerals associated with it. But in terms of tailpipe emissions, EVs are zero. And it's just a matter of 2-3 years, and the TCO, also the total cost of ownership, which is the capex and opex, would reach parity with conventional vehicles as well. And in terms of cost savings, also people say that if there are reports which claim that if there is a drive of 15,000 to 30,000 kilometers per year, the payback period from EVs also could be covered within 3 to 5 years. So with this note, I am going to delve into EVs and more from how professionals could consider a career in policy. I will be covering other aspects as well later, but the focus would be more on this. So speaking about myself, when I myself started out, I got into it by accident. My focus was more on renewable energy and battery storage. I entered from a market research perspective. And from a battery storage lens, I started delving deeper into the EV sector. And the talks were always about, how EVs are going to be the future. So I started out around 7 to 8 years ago. And it was always about how EVs are the future. Maybe one day when the costs reach parity, I might buy an EV. But cut to the present situation where we see EVs literally all around us, e-rickshaws and the electric auto that I myself take to work almost every day. Then we have buses, services like Uber Shuttle, which help people go from Noida to Gurgaon and back. So we are already there. EVs are not anymore the future; they are the present, and we need to figure out how we could, solve all the other issues around EVs, and that's why I'm very excited to be in this panel. So the fact that EVs are the present right now is not just a testament to falling battery prices, but also to several EV policies and regulations that the entire sector has worked hard to bring about. So currently, Delhi has 11% penetration of EVs, and in the whole of India, we have more than 26 states which have policies that are notified, which focus on demand and supply side incentives. And we are looking to reach a 30% penetration for electric cars by 2030. So we have supply side incentives like the PLI for advanced chemistry cell manufacturing for auto components, which really is a push for manufacturers towards producing EVs and move away from producing conventional vehicles. And we have demand side incentives like the one that recently came out called the PM E-Drive, which is not just focusing on e-buses and two-wheelers and three-wheelers. It's talking about trucks and ambulances as well. So it's a very exciting time to be here. And the thing is that for me, what I realized is when I started off, I would look at market research, and I got into EVs. I started looking at policies specifically for batteries and charging infrastructure. But when I moved on to another organization, I realized that the whole um, the whole ecosystem is much larger than that. There are urban planners, architects, town planners involved, and there needs to be a conversation between engineers, discoms, charge point operators, charging infrastructure players, and the town planners and public transport. So it's all collective. It need not be looked at in silos. So it's not like someone who is more interested in the technical aspects should just look at that, or someone who is into policies can ignore the technical aspects. So it should all come together. So that's policies, they have shaped not just charging standards, battery safety norms, localization targets, but also they have shaped behavior of citizens as well. And when it comes to looking at careers, we can look at it in four broad ways. When we look at manufacturing could be a huge a place where people can fit in, especially given the government and the Prime Minister's focus on Viksit Bharat, and looking at making components and parts within India itself. So this would lead to several manufacturing jobs, especially with the decreasing battery costs. And secondly, it would be regarding charging infra, where there is a scope for electrical engineers, civil engineers, and people into construction and maintenance as well, because there needs to be a lot of thought that goes into electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Thirdly, focus on research and development, especially since batteries form around 60% of an electric vehicle's cost. And there is a lot of research that still needs to be done to get batteries which can deliver faster energy and power density, and looking at faster charge times as well, like solid state batteries or graphene batteries, sodium ion batteries, and also helping to focus on the entire energy efficiency part of it. Research is also needed on how we need to look at the different vehicle form factors separately, be it two-wheelers, three-wheelers, buses and trucks. So for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, the focus would be more on creating a lightweight body or low-cost design, and you can have swappable batteries easily for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, but that would not be the case for buses, trucks and four-wheelers. So we would need knowledge on power electronics, thermal management, embedded systems there. But for buses and trucks, we would need to really focus more on how we could have fast charging, or more number of like city planning and really planning where in how much proximity, in how much frequency, like in a 3 kilometer to 3 kilometer grid would we need charging infrastructures to be deployed, and really taking a call on if there are any geographies, for example, in the hilly areas where maybe even battery swapping could work for buses and trucks, if there is enough, if there are enough funds being poured into research and development there. And with trucks, we would need people with an engineering and a cost perspective, as well as a policy perspective, to really look at how payload of the truck could be managed. Payload is basically the weight of the batteries, the weight of the entire batteries without the weight of the truck itself. The weight of So basically, with electric trucks, the main issue is, for those who don't know, is that the amount of material that can be stored in a truck reduces drastically because of the weight of the batteries. So those are the things that need to be really explored. Those are a few of the very few challenges, especially for e-trucks. And so just to summarize, courses probably in electrical engineering, electrical and electronics engineering, renewable energy engineering as well. I have done renewable energy engineering and management myself from Terry University. There are similar courses in several other colleges across India, UPES, IITs, NITs, etc. And the beauty is that people with general engineering degrees can also fit, as well as people with specific degrees that are just now coming in renewables or even in electric mobility can also fit very well. And my focus, however, would be to say that for those of you who are just figuring out where you want to get into, you could also really focus on brushing up your economics principles, policy frameworks, and understanding of policy and regulatory environments. If you're hesitant to go ahead and do a course, you can even just go back and brush up your basic economics from your 9th, 10th, 11th NCERT textbooks. This is just for engineers. I'm talking to them who want to explore this space. For those who in economics already, you're good to go. And I feel along with masters, it's really good to get experience in internships, really figure out and by elimination decide which sector is working for you. You can start off with maybe interning for say an original equipment manufacturer, a vehicle manufacturer, and then you could try out with some charge point operators, and then you can work with probably a consulting firm, or you could work with a policy think tank, and that way you can just be curious and get to know what really works for you, where you feel that you would fit very well. In the end, I would like to say that in terms of financial security, there was this really beautiful these beautiful numbers that Mr. Nitin Gadkari shared from one of his addresses recently, where he says that he looks at a 20 trillion rupee market size for EVs by 2030, and around 5 crore jobs. So we're in a very good space, and what really is important, what really is key, is how you can marry the different concepts of engineering, technology, and policy and regulation. So all these together would be really good to address several challenges that are faced by the EV sector today. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chitra. Huge growth expected in the EV sector in the next few years. And thank you for guiding our students about the different pathways they can enter this space with. Really helpful. I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions on this. And now I will move to our last speaker of the day. Looking at e-mobility from the industry side is Ashwini Tiwari from Autobot India. He's the EV business consultant and founder. Welcome, Ashwini.
Yeah, Sondre, hi. Thank you. Hope I'm audible.
Yes, yes, you are.
All right. Thank you, team AEEE, for inviting me for this today World Youth Skill Day. And I think with my all esteemed panelists who have been covering, the net zero and sustainability, the context, like what are the different emerging new job roles and the career opportunities are emerging in India from this context when we are talking about going zero emission or sustainable developments, right? So I think the topic and the industry which I represent, it's totally focused to the e-mobility space. And I think my prior, the panel members have already talked about different other industries from the, the areas from, the construction to, the infrastructure and all. So as you know, I think when we talk about the emission creation specifically as the industry wise, so the top 5 contributors for the emissions like e-mobility, like all our transport sector, which is traditionally is ICE mobility, ICE sector. Now we are talking about the e-mobility, which we are transitioning from ICE to the battery operated or fuel cell powered vehicles, right? So which are the future of the mobilities. So where we see like the transportation segment is one of the like third contributor out of top 5 contributing segments for the emission. And with the government of India push towards decarbonization and lowering the emission, the impact, because most of our the metro cities been well recognized like the most pollutant, and we see Delhi one of the prime example when it happens with the smog and everything. So for the urban lifestyle and urban the developments becomes very important how we can deal with this kind of a problems of pollution. Okay. And the EV becomes a mandatory solution. Long term context, we are still exploring a lot of other uh, parallel, you can say, the fuel strategies or maybe the powertrain strategies going forward for what are the alternatives which are more the recyclable, green in nature. Though e-mobility, when we talk about uh, electric vehicles point of view, so that it runs largely on the lithium based battery packs. And like my panel also talked about, there is a heated debate on the global stage about its own, like the green concept. So yes, this is just a start point for this kind of a technology coming into the on road for the experimentation. But going forward, the globally the research is going on how we can have the alternatives of the lithium, which are more required and more the sustainable, as well as you can have the recycling ability, right? So I'm going to focus more on a very niche topic right now. I think uh, my earlier colleague Suchitra has broadly covered a lot of prospect in terms of career risks and all. I'm going to make it more niche, more specific to it, and I'm assuming that the audience right now we are having more of a blend of technical as well as commercial or the business professional. So I'm just going to share my screen if it is like if you can just confirm. So I'll just quickly walk through about. Can you just confirm it is if it is visible to you?
Mm, yes, it's visible now.
All right, thank you. So when we are talking about the zero emission in the mobility space, so definitely the current technology which we see is the electric vehicles, but alternatively we are also talking about the alternate fuels, which are the hydrogen, biofuels, and other parallel like the fuels strategies which is going on, and the industry is already working upon it. But the popularity of electric vehicles is gaining a lot of traction in India and on the global stage because of its commercialization so far, which are the alternatives are available. But as far as the battery is concerned, we are going ahead with some of the alternatives of the lithium, which are sodium ion or solid state batteries, and even the aluminum air kind of a chemistries for the Indian context. And you can see the rising geopolitical tension and the supply chain issues. India has to have some kind of a strong supply chain dependencies which are built in India, and where we are the largest. If you see the raw material side, sodium and the aluminum, these are the two major commodities which are widely available in in Indian region. So I think there are a lot of research going on in that context. So these are the evolving the technologies which are focused to e-mobility space. And you might be wondering why we are talking about e-mobility. Okay, so there are and why this is actually matters to everyone in the in the today's context. So you might be knowing, like earlier I mentioned, transport industry, which we include everything, sea, water, air, all kind of mode of transportation, the vehicles and the machines we are using for our transport, daily transportation utilities. These are all powered by the traditional fuels, which are either powered by natural gases or diesel or petrol, any form of the things, and they emit a lot of carbon. Okay, so there is a requirement for this kind of emissions, the technologies which can control this kind of emission. And largely we have started with the hybrid mechanism, the hybrid technologies, but that could get a global stage in kind of adoption and the popularity. But at the same time, we have been seeing this battery operated vehicles, which China, you can see it's one of the highest, the penetration with almost like 36% of the total penetration of the e-mobility in the China, where we have the European countries. We are still at the very nascent stage, because hardly 10 years back we started this technology in India, and overall it's all just like we hardly reached to 6% of penetration in today's context. So government of India envisioned for 30% by 2030, but with the dynamics in the global supply chain and other disruption, because the wars and trades and traffics and control of the supply chain, it seems a bit difficult to achieve. But yes, the kind of progress we see in India for the e-mobility is really growing faster, with at least weighted accumulated CAGR of 28% to 30% annually. Okay, so this kind of a trend we see. Uh, this also brings a context of, because we are talking about industry which being active and leading since last almost a century, okay, which is ICE mobility. But now going forward, we are having a transition in that technology itself, which accumulate, like if you talk about the given numbers, the employability perspective, so almost like 7 crore direct and indirect employment, all managed by and offered by the automotive itself. Okay, so when we are talking about change or the adoption on this kind of a technology, it will be leading to some of like the huge number in the employment creation also. And this context require a different sort of skill sets and the approach for the students, even the professional, and even for the existing employees of the industry who are already there. We as a company, which have been almost working from last 10 years, building the entire ecosystem for skill development, working with the different government forums and industry together to bring the qualification pack, job role mappings and everything. Uh, so I think going forward, for there are huge scope even for the engineers, even for non-engineers who are into from the MBAs or any non-technical professionals, and even for the entrepreneurs. So this industry is bringing a lot of opportunity in terms of in terms of the businesses, because there are rising new business models in that concept. So I'm just going to share a few of the slides for you. Uh, so I was talking about what are the major factors or the roles which are contributing to the rise of this kind of a mobility. So there are three critical factors. One is the electrification, the requirement of the electrification we require for a new kind of age requirements and the set goals for going net zero. We have to have some alternative the platform which reduce the the tailpipe emissions, right? And as also like from wherever we are doing the mining of the raw materials, that also has to be sustainable and recyclable. So the both contexts we have to see, and then the sustainable goal for the global context which are already there, and digitalization and automation. So now you see the profile of the electric vehicles. We see it is more like getting more connected, more like with your smartphones and all. Earlier we didn't have this kind of experience with the vehicles, but with the electric vehicles we could see this kind of the user experience and the connectivity with the vehicle. So I think rising of AI, ML, IoT, and other the technologies are getting integrated within this kind of a mobility. So in my opinion, that this change is not going to directly impact only on the automotive side, but it has also a direct impact on six other industries which are directly interlinked with the mobility or the electric vehicles. Even for the batteries specifically. So battery, one of the major component of the electric vehicle, but if you see the application of this, the technology, this also being, we are using in the solar industry, we are using in the drone technologies, we are using in the energy storage devices and the requirements. So the battery, even for the defense applications, right? So the lithium batteries are having a very larger, going to have a larger applications. So that, okay. I hope I'm audible, right?
Yes, Ashwini, you're audible. If we could close this in the next couple of minutes, that will be helpful because we want some time for the Q&A as well.
Sure. So 3 to 4 minutes when we'll be having that.
Sure.
So I was talking about some of the areas which are like emerging domains in the mobility space, which is one is the battery itself, which is a lot of research is going on, because earlier we were more into the traditional lead acid batteries, which has its own the demerits and the limited storage capacities. But this kind of a new age vehicles require a different kind of a storage and thermal stabilities, as well as the performance and safety. So this was something very new domain altogether for the different applications. A lot of research is going on, and this is also creating a lot of business applications in terms of, like you might have seen the MG Motor has introduced one of its platform called the battery as a service BaaS model. So unlike like we are using our petrol, right? So we are buying our petrol vehicles without petrols. We only have the fuel tank, and we have to pay for the fuels per kilometer which we are fueling. So something very similar concept we are coming up in is already there, and a lot of industry is exercising to see how we can make it more economical, affordable e-mobility available for the end users. Okay. Another, like the charging infrastructure. So you can relate directly as like we have the petrol pumps network. So something very similar we require for the charging infrastructure network, even not only in the tier one cities, but across India, like tier two, tier three cities, highways, and all the connected, so that you have the network where you don't have the range anxiety. So this is also upcoming business models for a lot of people have already started and doing a good business opportunities in that. Then we have other areas like the trucks, the fleet part, okay, last mile delivery. So these are another emerging domains. And now we have something which is a mixture of IT and automobile, which is we are talking about the digitalization and smart mobility, or the connected mobility and the autonomous applications. So these are the something a new emerging domain in the EV space. Okay. So you can see as a engineers or a student going forward, this will be more required a multidisciplinary approach to generate sort of skills. The traditional engineers or the people who are coming into this domain for the e-mobility space, because we are going to deal with largely the electronics and the concepts and thermal and other areas. So I think it require a completely a new approach for the people or the students who are planning to get into the e-mobility space. So upskilling definitely is very much important, and also that too with the multidisciplinary skill sets. So I think that will be my final summation. I think for anything which you are planning for e-mobility space, how you can go ahead, and you can connect me on LinkedIn also. We are writing a lot of articles, blogs on specific to the career context and the reports, and what are new job roles are emerging in the various departments or job roles, even for the engineers or the professionals, right? So you can get a lot of insights from our newsletters and the forums which we are already available and actively contributing there. So that's all from my side, and thank you for providing this opportunity. And
Thank you, Ashwini, for that. And now we will open the floor for question and answers. And we have received some really interesting questions throughout the webinar today. Our first question, Purva, I would direct it towards you. And the question is, which professional certifications do you believe carry the most weight in the sustainability job market today? This question, you can answer it for buildings and you can answer it for the sustainability market as a whole. And I would request all our speakers to limit their answers to under a minute so that we have time to ask questions to each of you. Thank you.
Hi, Soundarya. I was not able to hear you properly. Your voice is breaking.
I'll just repeat the question.
But others are able to hear her properly. Is it my connection which is a problem, or?
Yeah, we're able to hear Soundarya.
Okay, fine. Soundarya, you can continue.
Yeah. The question is, which professional certifications do you believe carry the most weight in the sustainability job market today?
Okay. Professional certifications in terms of green building certifications, I would say LEED AP, which is a LEED accredited professional, or WELL or WELL standard is also there, and you can become accredited professional for all the rating systems that are available, like LEED, WELL, GEM, EDGE. So there are various, and you can become accredited professionals for all. So that is something which you can aim for. Also, Energy Conservation Building Code, Bureau of Energy Efficiency is thinking of coming out with a exam for building energy managers and auditors. And I think you should keep on looking out for that examination and give that examination, because then it will allow you to assess buildings for their energy conservation building code compliances.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Kiskar. We have a follow-up question to this, which I would direct towards Mr. Indrajit Shaw. Indrajit, where can youth from rural or tier 2 areas access hands-on sustainability training?
That's a good question. What I'd suggest is look up this company called Value Labs. Okay. They actually, while not just on sustainability, they actually allow students to work on corporate problems, particularly from tier 2 and 3 cities, which will give you that exposure. Additionally, I'll put on chat a list of MOOCs that you can take a look at to start off with on this journey. Back to you, Soundarya.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Indrajit.
I would like to add here that even ISO certifications, which are there for GHG accounting, which is greenhouse gas accounting, lead auditors. So these, ISO 40,000. So these are also something which you can look out for.
Thank you. Now our next question is posed to Santosh and Ashwini. Both of you can answer this. The question is, as artificial intelligence and digital tools transform how we live, learn, and work, which skill is the most critical to build climate careers in the next 5 years?
Well, that's a tough one, Soundarya, for me. Well, I think it's clearly affecting. I mean, there is no field, which is not getting affected by artificial intelligence, right from skilling, to programming, to even machines. I think artificial intelligence is undoubtedly bringing all these things together. A combination of operating technology and IT technology is clearly the way forward. Now, in terms of what skills or which courses, is that what was the question, Soundarya? What makes it happen? Is that right? So where do we get this?
Yeah.
Now, well, I'm not an educationist, so you'll not find a perfect answer in my response here. What Johnson Controls looks at, and I can maybe add to that. For us, I think a good engineering background is very helpful when you're pursuing AI. I think inclination towards use cases, some work related to how they have, the student or the aspirational candidate is able to demonstrate his or her interest towards this area. He may have, or she may have done any work related to sustainable cooling per se out of its own research, something that is interesting, something that's very personal to that person who is being able to work on it. So I wouldn't, pardon me for saying this, I wouldn't give a lot of weightage for certifications. I would give a lot of weightage for the skills he or she is able to develop, and that can be demonstrated through LinkedIn, through white papers they might want to other publications, or just stand out in your own college with the work that you have been able to do. So maybe Suchitra may be able to give a better answer, but that's what I think.
Absolutely. Initiative counts and adaptability counts anywhere in your career. And Ashwini, if you could also answer this, what AI skills or digital tools can be the most critical to build career in e-mobility?
Yeah, I think right. I'm one of the, I think, member from the education point of view. So so yeah. So there are a lot of because we are now in the age of AI, right? And everything we see, it's almost like getting into the automation area. Like nowadays we see everything, most of the application going into the automation and the other spaces, specifically in the e-mobility space. The rise of automation we see nowadays, now even because we are now the electric mobility as a profile, you see it's more like electronics and telecommunication and everything like I was talking about. So IT is a part of the e-mobility space. The software is a part of the e-mobility space. So now it is more like the combination of all the like engineering segments we have all together is the e-mobility, right? So there we have a lot of data are coming up. So there we are talking about big data science, DSAs. We are talking about the people who are doing the front end, back end automation and everything, right? Customer. So I see a lot of rise in the e-mobility space, especially in the one is the manufacturing domain, where we have all the lines are getting automated. We are getting into the industry 5.0, where AI is taking a role in the decision making segments, like where we have the precision and the the just in time requirements for the production, and the repetition of the work is required. Again, a role of the AI is getting into the battery space, because we have a lot of data from the sensors of the vehicles, like the rider behavior, the safety. A lot of data are getting emitted from the vehicle itself. So we are talking about now there is a new concept called software driven vehicles, right? So SDVs, right? So in the automotive, like Mahindra recent, which have launched the platform, and even Tata Harrier has introduced on the SDV platform. So we are talking about the self parking. The vehicles are getting auto parked. So a lot of automation or ADAS level which are coming in the vehicle. We are introducing the levels of ADAS. So these are the evolving segment. And now lastly we see as a service domain, which is one of the larger part of the ecosystem, which is not yet fully evolved, or it is also at a very nascent stage. So we are talking about the prediction and the prediction thing into the the breakdown of the vehicle or the components, giving you the AI and models can analyze the data and give you in advance notification, even for the fleet people who are operating, maybe for the mining, maybe for the last mile deliveries, or maybe for the users also, right? So these kind of roles are very much popular and getting a lot of traction with the AI. in the e-mobility space, which I see the recent examples in the industry.
Thank you, Ashwini. I hope that answers the question with your. And now we have a question for Mr. Anson Sando. What kind of industry academia collaborations do you think are essential to accelerate the scalability and adoption of sustainable cooling solutions in India?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, and this is something that I think we've been talking about a lot more. A lot of the work that happens in academia, unfortunately, ends with papers or patents being published. That's about it. We need to sort of commercialize. And so what we've done is actually work with specific companies and try to build long-term projects that have pilots embedded into it. So that ways, we're not sort of only doing the theory aspect of it, we're showcasing it, we're collecting data, and then we sort of distribute some of our learnings, findings, which very often in our case has led to much wider adoption and commercialization in these sort of efforts that we've taken up. So that's one, and one that comes out very glaringly.
Got it. Thank you for that. And now we have a question for everyone, and we can probably have Suchitra answer this first. As we close this session of World Youth Skills Day, what's one message you want to share with the young people at the cusp of starting their climate careers?
Soundarya, your voice is not so clear, breaking a little.
Okay.
Yeah, even we're not able to hear you.
Okay. What's one message you want to share with the young people at the cusp of starting their climate careers?
I think the question is, what's the one message that you'd like to share with individuals who are at the cusp of starting their sustainability career?
Yeah.
Can I go first?
Yes.
I think first you need to understand whether you want to go in a managerial role or go deeper down into technology applications and understanding of technology. So that's the first thing that you have to decide, and then maybe pursue that journey. That is my message.
Thank you. Thank you, Rukeshwar.
I'll go next. I think what's important is, there were questions on what should I do and which area. There's no straight answer. You have to read about most of the topics, figure out a few areas that interest you, get some hands-on work. That's what I'd suggest, seconding what Santosh said. Certifications in this space is good for your knowledge, but you won't get hired just because you have a certificate. You will have to back it with experience. So my suggestion is, while you're studying, get some hands-on experience, voluntary experience. That will help you understand what you need to do or want to do. Thanks.
Asking for the name of the lab you mentioned that it was to work ESG projects.
Sorry, who was that for?
That's for you. Did you mention a lab that works with ESG projects? One of our participants wanted to know.
Value Labs is a not-for-profit company, okay, which provides projects to students who are studying, for the graduation. It allows you to work on a systematic manner. It combines theory and practice, so you can work hands-on on a company-focused project that helps you understand what industry wants. So Value Labs is not a lab; it's a not-for-profit company.
Going back to the original question to Santosh now.
Well, yeah. So once again, I think I'll echo what Indrajit said here. I think I personally think this is a very personal thought. Once again, I think one should stay hungry. One should stay well informed. One should spend a lot of time within herself or himself to understand where they can contribute to. I think that's what I would say is the best thing to do. Quite frankly, I think there's so many things happening. It would be difficult for me to summarize it.
Thank you. Answer?
I mean, completely echo Santosh and Indrajit's thoughts, but I think what sort of one additional point that I may add, which is also very relevant here, is sort of to chase your interests. I think what we found is that, when someone's very passionate and interested in a particular area, it could be, some aspect of cooling, it could be solar, it could be wind, anything. We often find that really stands out. You can always get certifications, you can always have degrees, but showcasing your deep interests and passion in whatever area that may be will always sort of set you apart from the others, and that's something that I think everyone
You
should.
put it in a better hands.
Thank you.
Suchitra, can you hear us?
Yeah, something that Mr. Indrajit Shaw said, but I sometimes I understand it gets very difficult to really find out what is that one area that you're really interested in. So I would say read a lot, research a lot on the online, and then find people whose work you love, and contact them and actively contact mentors and attend more such webinars that similar to what AEEE has done. There are several workshops, conferences, offline, online, which are very easily accessible to students. A lot that many think tanks are doing. So that will give a lot of sense for you to understand which specific area of sustainability you want to enter. Yeah.
And Ashwini, lastly to you.
Yeah, so I think I'm very much agree with what Santos has mentioned about the passion and the interest, right? So I think building a career in the sustainable development. So because today or tomorrow, everything is going to be sustainable, right? So it's a matter of the time, right? So we can see everywhere we are talking about the sustainable development, sustainable growth, sustainable skills and career and all. So I think it's more important is we must have a mindset towards this segment. Am I audible?
Yes.
All right, so I think it's more important to have a mindset first if you really want to get into this domain and build a career because and again this is require a lot of the passion and interest, and definitely for finding an interest you have to have something on ground. You have to put your boots on the ground and explore and understand. So I think doing some internships and some projects with the practical will give you an exposure to really evaluate yourself, like what are your core strengths and the weaknesses and the interest areas, and I think accordingly you can make a plan and move forward in this domain. So that will be my submission.
Thank you, Ashwini. And thank you to all our speakers for joining in today and giving us your precious time. I hope this session was useful to all the students who joined in and your questions were answered. Before I close it, I would request all the speakers to please turn on your cameras so we can, take a screenshot to document the session.
And Soundarya, thank you so much for superbly moderating this.
Thank you, Santosh. Okay, done. Thank you so much, everyone. Looking forward to seeing you.
Thanks, Andrea and the AEEE team. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Have a good day ahead. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
And the time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.